less than 24 hours, Georgians will be under a shelter-in-place order.
McDonald, though, said he did not know the man was handcuffed and was trying to use his foot to pin him to the ground so he could be handcuffed.
If your friends, neighbors, or local organizations are not complying, report them to us.
Howdy, y'all, and welcome to the Free Georgia Podcast. My name is Jake Green. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you have any questions about the Libertarian Party, about what we're doing around the state of Georgia, go to lpgeorgia.com to learn more about what we believe in, what we're doing to spread liberty in our state. You can also go follow us on Twitter at lpgeorgia. We have a convention coming up at the beginning of 2024, January 26th through the 28th down in Conyers, Georgia. Tickets are on sale right now, $75. We have incredible speakers coming in for it. We've got Spike Cohen, Shane Hazel, Sarah Higdon, Adam Nutter, Edgar Mills, the Tower Gang Pod, as well as 6 of the 6 Libertarian candidates for president having a debate. So you don't want to miss it. It's going to be a great time. This past summer was fantastic. So make sure you get your tickets now. We'll be having vendors and booths and all sorts of stuff for you to, all sorts of people for you to interact with, things to learn. Yeah, it's going to be a great time. Looking very much forward to it. Today we have a guest joining the show. He is working on a case here in the state of Georgia that involves school zones. His name is James Dutton. All right, James Dutton, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So there aren't going to be a lot of people who know about this case. So can you explain like what this case is and why it's important?
So what my case is we're trying to get the actual constitutional law, both of the federal constitution and the state of Georgia's constitution, enforced in these sorts of specific cases. The case revolves around legislation that the state passed a few years ago, actually, which would allow for a for-profit corporation out of state to contract with local law enforcement to put in automatic speed detection cameras with radars in school zones, and then to write non-criminal citations, aka a fine, but not criminal. And then that corporation mails them to people that then says, hey, 6 weeks ago, 3 months ago, you drove to the school zone and you owe us $75. And that's it. And they collect their fine money. I was literally on the phone this morning with a potential new client who said, wait, I would have to go to court to fight it? Well, it's only $75. It's not worth me taking a day off. I'd lose more to take the day off to fight it. So I'm just going to pay it.
Right. And
I said, look, you can if you want to, but to me, our constitutional rights are more important. So take the day off and fight it. All that said, I've got about a score of these tickets that we're fighting. I would take more, but with the pending case as it is, we decided we're gonna sort of hold off on them. That said, I don't think we've been paid at all to do the case that is sort of our model case. Our model defendant here got one of these tickets. He's from out of the county. He works here in Spalding County though, and he got a ticket on a 5-lane divided highway with a turn lane that at 4:30 in the afternoon drops down to a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. He got this even though he didn't even realize it. It was like 3 months later when he finally gets the ticket in hand.
Right.
The procedure as outlined in the actual statute says he gets a hearing to go and discuss the ticket with law enforcement. Mm-hmm. And at that hearing, he's supposed to be afforded all the same rights that he gets at any other hearing. However, those hearings take place here in Spalding County, at least, in our law library with no judge present, with no clerk present, not recorded. And essentially, it's a representative from the sheriff's office who says, all right, you ready to pay? Well, no, I have these issues with this. This is not okay. I have rights. I want a jury. No, you can either pay me or we'll set it up to go before the judge. Well, wait a minute. I thought this was a hearing as outlined in the statute. No. The hearing doesn't work like that. You're either going to pay or we're going to do it somewhere else. And that's it. And they do a hearing like that for all the cases, but nothing happens. It's not a hearing. It's not even recorded. So
Wow.
I've gone in and there'll be a crowd of people there in the lobby of the law library going, this is not fair. I want my day in court. After that hearing where they sort of blow you off, you get finally set up to go to court, where they call that same representative as your prosecutor, as the main witness. Mm-hmm. In our case, it's the solicitor of the state court, and it's, of course, the state court judge here in Spalding County, at least. Every county does these different. I keep saying here in Spalding County because every county in the state does it totally different. It's in a different court. Sometimes it's a probate court, sometimes a magistrate court. Sometimes it's an outside contracted person. Sometimes it's law enforcement themselves enforcing it. It's done differently everywhere. Totally different procedures, totally different rules of engagement for the same law, right? So when you finally get in there, it's the solicitor. And I immediately objected and said, wait a minute now. The solicitor has a very specific defined role in Georgia. Our solicitors can enforce criminal laws, and they can enforce very specific non-criminal laws through their enabling statute. And this law is not one of them. In fact, they added the school bus automatic radar, like the school bus armed tickets. Yeah. They created that law and this law at the same time, in the same session, I think on the same day. But that law also included an amendment to the enabling statute for the solicitors that allowed them to prosecute those laws. But they specifically didn't do that in these cases. So, of course, I objected. Judge, I'm sorry, he doesn't have the authority given to him as solicitor to be here. Right. And the solicitor said, I agree. I'm not enabled to be here. I don't, and the judge said, well, we have no one else to do it, so I'm appointing you to do it. And he goes, well, okay, if you're appointing me to do it. And again, the hearing is as one-sided. I'll send you the transcript. It's as one-sided as it possibly can get. Wow. They only call, again, one of the senior officers, one of the local law enforcement, mm-hmm. who says, yeah, I got this email, and it says that he broke the law. Wait a minute. Objection. You can't testify to what someone else told you, and that's hearsay. Right. An out-of-court statement intended to prove the fact being asserted. That's hearsay. No, we're going to let it in because there's no other evidence. Well, wait a minute, Judge. Don't I have the constitutional rights to? And then again, it's, well, I have the right, if I'm getting a speeding ticket, which is effectively what these are, to challenge has the machine been calibrated correctly? Have they done a calibration check? Mm-hmm. And if I'm stopped by a law enforcement officer, I get to right there on the side of the road say, oh, you did it via radar? Calibrate your radar right now and make sure that it's okay. Right. And we went in the hearing through how they do that with little tuning forks and 2 speeds of tuning forks. And you hold it in front of it and this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. In this case, they have a self-diagnostic that it self-calibrates every day remotely. And a man whose name we don't know, who is just known as the squiggly line, I assume it's a man, it might be a woman, signed off on, again, in either Tempe, Arizona, or in Seattle, Washington, one of the 2 places that this company operates out of. And they just send us this thing. Yeah, it's been calibrated. See, I squiggled my name there. It's calibrated. And I go, Judge, how do they calibrate it? Well, we don't know. Well, does it have the tuning forks inside it? I don't think so. Does it have any moving parts at all? I don't think so. How did it calibrate it? Oh, it checks itself.
I mean, this is crazy. So okay. There's so many problems with this.
There's so many problems with it.
First off, a private company coming into our state and deciding and convincing the government to let them put speeding cameras.
That's right.
In certain areas is horrendous. Like that makes absolutely no sense.
Are you ready for the real slap in the face here?
Yes, please.
It's a $75 ticket. They get 2/3 of it. The for-profit company.
What?
That's right. We get $25. They get $75. The court gets none of the money. The solicitor's office, who's been asked to prosecute, gets none of the money. The county gets none of the money. The school board gets none of the money. $25 of that ticket goes to the sheriff's department.
Okay. And
he can spend it on what he wants. Now, there is a part of the statute that says they can add $25. The court can add $25 in like a fee, like a court fee on top of the 75, which then goes to the court to pay for the court's expenses. And they've elected to do that here in Spalding County. So it's really a $100 ticket now.
Yeah.
But still, that doesn't pay for the massive amount of these tickets. These tickets take up just as much time in the court as any other ticket, as any speeding ticket, as any stop sign ticket.
Yep.
Spalding County usually does between 9,000 and 12,000 tickets a year. We have one state court judge. We have one state court prosecutor with an assistant. Okay. And they can barely handle 9,000 to 12,000 of these. Okay. In the 1 year since these tickets have been active, they have already sent out 55,000 of these tickets. And that was as of our hearing in September. So it's probably closer to 60,000 now.
Wow.
All right. Now do that math, $50 each going to an external out-of-state, for-profit corporation for effectively writing some code and installing these cameras.
With a possible camera that might not actually be calibrated properly, so that it might not actually get your speed correctly. Like none of that makes any sense.
None of it makes any sense at all.
Also, like if a private company is doing this, that means that if you don't pay it, it's going to affect, I imagine, your credit score and things of that nature down the road. Is that the case?
In fact, it gets worse than that.
Oh, no.
Because the private corporation has contracted with the state, with the local law enforcement. They get to use the state police power. And so if you end up owing this money, you haven't paid it, that debt gets reported to the tax assessor's office, and you can't re-register your vehicle until you pay the ticket.
Holy crap.
It is so
wild.
One-sidedly wild. Again, we have 30 or so very, very good, 100% obvious to me, constitutional objections here. Hey, wait a minute. I got to face my accuser. Hey, wait a minute. I get an actual day in court.
Yeah.
In court, all of the rules of evidence, whether it's the criminal rules of evidence or the civil rules of evidence, apply. Even though it says it's non-criminal, it's the sheriff's deputy who's sitting over there,
right.
Which means, and you have the possibility of taking away my liberty, aka my liberty of using my car. Mm-hmm. I know that driving on our roads is a privilege, but owning this car is a property right, and being able to use this car is a property right. Mm-hmm. And yet I'm not afforded a public defender. If you're trying to do this to me, I have a Sixth Amendment right to a lawyer, and there's just over and over and over. It's really, really frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that stuck out most is when he said, we don't have any other evidence, so we're going to accept this evidence. It's like, just because you have no evidence doesn't mean you can start accepting crap evidence that doesn't make any sense, like hearsay. Like that's ridiculous.
If you really want it to, I mean, every layer of this that you peel back, it really makes you more upset and more upset. In this case, the case is versus my client and his wife.
What?
Hey, you both were driving this car and speeding. You see, they're both the registered owners of the car. So the ticket goes to the registered owner or owners. So they're both cited as if both of them drove the car. when of course only one person could possibly be driving this car at a time.
I don't know. I've seen a lot of cars with 2 steering wheels.
Right? Well, I happen to have one of those 2 steering wheel cars as well. And you're just like,
really?
you go, Judge, clearly only one person was driving this Ford truck.
Right.
Well, and it's like, wait a minute. Well, if it's not him, it's his wife. Well, you can't just write 2 people a ticket and then say, well, y'all figure it out. That's not how the law works. That's not how constitutional rights work. How did this law get passed? Like, how did this sneak through? How did this all come about? Do you know? So this is one of the I can't blame any individual, right? This is one of sort of the downsides of a constitutional republic. Constitutional republic, our elected officials think about the next election and think about getting reelected, as opposed to a monarchy who thinks about, I want to hand this over to my son or daughter in better shape than what I've got it. And so because of that, our elected officials tend to vote for things that sound great. Hey, there's this problem. We want to do away with this problem. Much like the distracted driving law. People are dying. There was this kid who died because of distracted driving. We've got to do something. Mm-hmm. And so they passed this distracted driving law that itself has huge, gigantic holes in it. Mm. And you go, yes, but if you wanted to actually address the problem, there was a way to do it, but this isn't it. And it's the same thing here. They say, the school zones, yes, we have to make our kids safer. We have to do something to get people to stop speeding in school zones. And yet, there's no, again, I'm not saying this statewide, but in Spalding County, there is no recorded instance in all of Spalding County history of any child being hurt or injured by a vehicle or even killed in a school zone. It's never happened. It's never happened. So to say that this law was somehow actually going to slow people down and keep our kids safe, I think it's done the exact opposite. You see, in several of the more busy areas where kids would actually cross the street to get to school, there used to be crossing guards. But now they have this, and so the school doesn't employ those crossing guards anymore. So now they've removed the crossing guards because people will slow down because of this law, and yet they've written 55,000 of them. There's a little bit more than 70,000 people in our entire county, and they've written more than 55,000 of them, probably closer to 65,000 of them by now. Wow. So people aren't slowing down. So this law has arguably made our kids less safe in school zone because the crossing guards are gone. I haven't seen officers enforcing these laws with physical radar like they would occasionally do before. Mm-hmm. And yet people are still speeding. So our kids are arguably less safe. But when it got to the state legislature, there's this out-of-state for-profit company that comes in and says, hey, we've already written the law. This makes kids safer. Don't you want to vote for safe kids? How dare you think about voting against the law that would make our kids safer? And they go, well, I got to make kids safer. We've got to vote for this.
Right.
It reminds me, I'm on the county commission here in Spalding, and it reminds me of when COVID first broke in 2020, and the lockdown started. They came to us and said, hey, we got to hold an emergency meeting. We got to do something. And they said, we got to put a curfew in on any store that has 2 openings. We only let them use 1 opening. We got to do something. And I went, how does that help? Like, if you want people to get away from each other, wouldn't you want both entrances open instead of forcing everyone to go through one door? Wouldn't you want people to shop at midnight and 2 a.m. instead of all between 7 and 9? Right. Well, but James, we have to do something. And I said, look, this is doing just something is the same as you always see guys on the coast in Florida when a hurricane's coming, shooting their guns at a hurricane. And I'm sure it makes them feel better, but it's not doing anything. And this law is the same thing when it comes to children's safety. The government went, we have to do something. And so they've done something, but right. it hasn't made anyone safer. It certainly has generated a lot of money for this for-profit out-of-state company, though.
Yeah, no kidding. I've got a question about just cameras in general. So I've heard arguments that like red light cameras and things of that nature are unconstitutional or at least wrong. Is there any basis for that as far as unconstitutionality of like cameras citing, like giving you citations?
a lot of the same issues that you have with this law, you can have with any kind of camera-based law. Our litigation is specific to this specific statute, but to my knowledge, the original, I want to say 2016, maybe even earlier than 2012, something like that, when they passed the first red light camera law, some brave attorney like me took that law, like I'm doing, all the way to the state Supreme Court, and it was struck down by the state Supreme Court. We're hoping they're going to do the same thing. Now, they strike it down for a specific reason, and then the state comes back and, says, well, let me fix that specific reason and create the same law. And so you have to take it back up and go, yeah, but I still get a jury. Yeah, but I still get to face my accuser. Right. So there's the three reactions the four reactions that the Supreme Court can have is, one, to just deny us cert and say, hey, we're not going to hear the case. You lose, which is what we hope won't happen. I'll leave my opinions of doing that. Otherwise, I'll just say I hope it doesn't happen. But if they take the case, they can do three things. One, I can just lose and say, no, you lost. The state can do what it wants, which anyone who reads this case, anyone who looks through it, I mean, they cited two people. I mean, just on that alone, it should be, hey, this is crazy. But again, there's dozens of reasons. They could modify the law. Hey, this is how you have to do it. And frankly, our state court judge and our solicitor hope that's the answer. They're saying, we got this law and it's so poorly written. It's so confusing. It's so disjointed. It's internally, it conflicts with itself internally. You have to do it this way, but, make sure you're doing it this way. It's like, you can't do it both. There's no way to really follow the law itself completely. So they're hoping that the state grants cert and gives us clarification as to how to do this. I mean, there's an equal protection clause argument as well. Why is this handled so differently in Spalding as it is in Chatham County, as it is in Henry County, as it is in Fayette County? Why is it different? Completely different. It's in different courts. It's different prosecutors. I mean, it's the probate judge that handles start to finish in Chatham County. It never touches our probate judge here. And yet they're all read the same statute and interpreted it totally different. So hopefully, at least, the Supreme Court will give us a clarification. No, it has to be done like this. This is how you cross all your T's. This is how you enforce the Constitution. They might, and I'm sort of expecting the last answer, which is them to just say, you're right, this is unconstitutional. State legislature maybe take another swing at this, but this one's gone. That's what I'm hoping.
Man, this is wild. Okay, so
it's a wild case.
I'm not a huge fan of a private company, especially from out of state, joining forces with the government to basically issue citations on citizens. Like, if you live in a private community where you pay for your own private police, your own private security, and you have rules that you want to live by within your own private community, then it makes sense for that private police or private security to issue citations based on what you agreed on when you moved there.
And I spoke to our sheriff about that. Hey, there might be a way to do this with a local ordinance and still uphold everyone's constitutional rights.
Right.
But what we're doing right now is not it. And we're trying our best to do it according to state law.
Right.
And the state law is just so poorly written that there's just no way to uphold your federal rights, your state rights, your God-given rights in general, and yet still follow through with this law.
Yeah. Oh, man. And then the fact that it's companies that aren't based in Georgia that are making enormous profit.
Enormous. It's millions in Spalding County alone. And Spalding's a small county.
Yeah. Man. Okay. So you said there is maybe around 60,000 of these just in Spalding or around Georgia?
No, just in Spalding County, which has less than 70,000 people. It's like 67,000, something like that.
So everybody's got a citation at this point.
Effectively. Look, I got like 8, but I go, wait, was I driving or was my wife driving? I don't know, but I'm the registered owner of the vehicle, so it just sends me a ticket. It could have been my wife. It could have been my brother borrowing my car, but I get a ticket. And it's just taking a picture of the license plate and goes, you're to blame. Well, wait a minute. That's not how the law works. That's not how anywhere else works.
Yeah, where's the burden of proof? Like, how is that possible?
Exactly.
Like,
they can come in and go, hey, I got an email from these guys that says you got a ticket. I looked at the pictures. Looks like your car. That's not enough. That's not enough.
That's
just not enough. On the calibration alone, the way you calibrate a radar is you hold literal tuning forks in front of it of two different things of known frequencies, and then it has to clock. This one's going 35 miles an hour because of the hertz, and this one's going 60, and then you hold them there, and it subtracts the difference. I mean, like, there's a whole procedure. Yeah. There's no moving parts in this camera. It can't be doing that. So if that's the way that the State Patrol has to do it, that every other law enforcement has to calibrate their radars, these things should be held to that. And if they can't get around to doing it, well, I'm so sorry. That's the way you have to calibrate these. Again, any one of these constitutional arguments should totally sink this entire statute. But again, we've made dozens of them.
Yeah. And
we're hoping that the state Supreme Court takes it up. Now, we have already appealed once. We had a motions hearing. I motioned for a jury trial. I motioned for discovery. It says it's not criminal. Okay, well, if it's not criminal, then it's civil. That's the two things. Mm-hmm. And in a civil case, I get interlocutories, I get different discovery, I get to sit down and interview all of the people with this corporation. I get to know the name of Mr. Squiggly Line. Like, I get to depose these people. And so we ask for these things. Hey, if it's civil, well, this is what we want. And the judge said, nope, and turned us down on every single one of our motions. Wow. So we appealed that, an interlocutory appeal. That went to the appeals court, who said, hey, you're making constitutional arguments. This goes to the Supreme Court automatically. The Supreme Court got it and sent us back a one-sentence response that was, no, upheld. Sorry, you lose. No justification. Again, I think it's because it was just on the merits. No one had been harmed yet. My client hadn't lost.
Right.
Now so that meant we had to come back, and so that was in February. Like, we came back in September, and we had the full hearing where we lost on everything, and he had to pay his $100. And so now he is harmed. He had to pay the fine. Yep. So we appealed again on all those grounds that we appealed before on, plus several others. Hopefully they'll actually read them this time and give us some sort of clarification. The judge hopes that they take the case and give us clarification. The solicitor hopes they do. The sheriff's office, hey, we'll do this however they want us to, or not do it if it's not legal. Again, you can't blame the sheriff for using a tool, however imperfect it is, the state legislature gave him. Yeah. So, but that's sort of the government's defense is, well, it's not totally me, it's the next guy. And the next guy says, oh, it's the next guy. Well, somebody's got to be blamed here. Somebody's got to take it on. So
exactly.
The buck eventually is going to stop with the Supreme Court, we hope.
This is why it's we talk about this all the time on these shows, and as the Libertarian Party, it's so important to have a good sheriff, find a good sheriff, elect a good sheriff, and a good mayor of your town.
Absolutely. Well, I can't say enough good about our sheriff here in town either. Sheriff Dix is really fantastic. When on a 4-1 with my a dissenting vote, when they passed all those curfews and stuff with COVID, he came up and said, this is not constitutional. He came up at that meeting and said, this is not constitutional. And even if you pass it, I'm not going to enforce it because it's not constitutional. So
what's his name again? Can you say?
And then, of course, 2 days later, Governor Daryl Dix, Sheriff Dix, he's really fantastic.
Awesome.
And again, our judge says, hey, I didn't want these. We're trying to figure out the best way to do it. So, boy, I really hope they give us clarification or strike it down. Again, they're used to doing 9,000 to 12,000 cases a year. And then just in the last year, they've done close to 60,000 of these on top of the normal caseload. He's going, boy, I hope they strike it down. Same thing with the solicitor. Boy, if I have to prosecute an additional 60,000 of these cases, just imagine.
Well, I mean, the thing is, now there's an incentive for them to keep going because they're making money off of it. So as soon as
for the sheriff, yeah.
As soon as the state starts making money or this corporation starts making money, if this corporation has any influence over the government whatsoever, they're going to use that as much as they can to keep making this money.
I'm sure that there was a lot of donations given right before the vote for this. The language used is effectively copy and paste from other states have been handed and used this same thing by this same corporation. And, you know, again, the corporation is like the school zone safety corporate. I mean, it's designed to sound like we're here to help children.
Oh, you mean like the Patriot Act, something like that?
Like the Patriot Act. Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. And so, you know, I'm sure, again, I don't make any specific accusations, but I'm sure there were nice dinners and lots of folks with really shiny shoes.
Kind of how it goes. Not to mention, like the squiggly line guy who says that the cameras are calibrated. Like he might not even be a human. He could just be a bot, an AI bot, or just a bot.
Every signature line has a line, the signature, and then the person's name. No, there's no name there. We subpoenaed it. We said, hey, we've subpoenaed this person. We sent them a subpoena and said, squiggly line guy's got to show up.
Yeah.
And they just they just didn't show up. I said, well, Judge, he's a key witness. We got to have this guy. I want you to put a bench warrant out for this. Well, no, we're not gonna do that.
How does that alone not get the case thrown out? Like I don't
again, there's so many fundamental constitutional problems, both with the state and federal constitution with this. I mean, when I say dozens, I'm not exaggerating, just over and over and over. And again, not to say our judge was doing a bad job. The way to get the state Supreme Court to take notice of it is to make it so obvious that they have to say, oh yeah, this is clearly hearsay. You can't do that. You know? So I won't say that it was pre-planned that we were going to lose, but I think everyone sort of inside baseball there knew, hey, the only way to actually get this changed is to send it to the state Supreme Court. And so even at that hearing, I think everyone knew the goal is how do we get this in the Supreme Court?
Gotcha. Okay. Well, this is infuriating on so many levels, but how can the citizens of Georgia fight back? Like, what can we do on an individual basis to help with this? So when it comes to this case or any other taking of our liberty or slight erosion of our liberty, I'm reminded the most important thing I learned in law school. That was from Cornell Stevens at Georgia State Law School. My very first day, 85 people in this room. You're terrified. It's your first day at law school. You're kind of doughy-eyed, like, oh man, I don't know what's going on. I hope they don't call on me. And the 6'5", gray-haired African-American magistrate judge walks in, and everyone is terrified. And they call him Darth Vader, like this guy, and he slams books down on the table, and I'll tell you, he got a $100 bill out of his pocket and he taped it to the board behind him. And we're all like, what is happening right now? And he said, all of you have a right to this $100 bill. And we were like, what is he talking about? And then he just starts calling on folks. You, what are the facts of the case? You, what do you mean you don't know? Why you're dumb? Like, and just yelling at us 2 hours, just where everyone in the room is just back to their seat, like, oh, I don't, what is happening? He's making people cry. I mean, it's a tough class. And at the end of the class, he turns around and he takes the $100 bill off the board. And he said, all of you have lost the right to this $100 bill. He said, at any time, any of you could have walked down here and gotten this $100 bill. You had the right to this $100 bill, but none of you asserted your right, and so you have lost it. The only rights you have are the rights that you assert, and the second you stop asserting them, you lose them, and you do not get them back. And he closed his books and he left. I have no idea what he talked about the rest of that class. I no idea. Okay. The only rights you have are the rights that you assert. Wow. And when you stop asserting them, you lose them and you do not get them back. That is the most important thing I learned in law school. I learned it the first class on my first day. Okay. Wow. As we as citizens, anytime we see something like this happening, oh, it's just a school zone, it's $75. It's not even worth the time I'll take off work to go fight it. Mm-hmm. Talk to your local legislatures. Everywhere in the state, they represent everybody. You've got one wherever you live. Mm-hmm. Talk to them, talk to your senator, okay? If enough of us are calling them, okay, one bee sting doesn't hurt. 1,000 bee stings and you're dead, okay? Call those people. I'm a county commissioner. If enough people call me about a problem, it's a huge problem, and we're going to do something about it. You can also reach out, of course, to the Supreme Court and say, hey, you guys need to look at this. Now they're going to go, oh, we can't take. Well, but if enough people say, hey, no, seriously, this is a big enough deal. This is something that's not fair. It's not constitutional. It violates every tenet
that our founding fathers believe in when they enshrined the protections that are given us in the Constitution to protect our God-given, not government-given, our God-given constitutional rights. Okay, if we can tell them that, if we can make, and that's sort of my goal coming on this podcast, is to generate enough political will in the state that they won't just go, no, here's you a one sentence answer, it stays, but look at it and say, oh, wow, this is a terribly poorly written law. This is not constitutional, and either fix it or strike it down and let the state do something different if they so choose. Wow. But it's not just with this. Any kind of, erosion of our rights, we need to be that bee that stands up and says, no, this is not okay, and call our legislators, call the governor's office and write them emails, write them letters. It matters. The one voice, they're going to go, nah, it's just one. But if 10,000 of us call, they're going to go, holy crap, we got to do something.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you heard it, folks. Go call your representatives, because this absolutely needs to be struck down, because it is
absolutely.
I mean, it is unconstitutional. It's almost there are parts of it that are inhumane and absolutely absurd. I mean, it's tactics just to get money. I would that's kind of what I've assessed of this whole thing. There are certain cities that have passed that have certain prices, costs of parking tickets, so that you don't want to go fight it. It's like,
that's right,
$50.
That's right.
Well, I can't go take the time to go fight this in court, even though it would,
that's right.
Even if they're giving out the ticket improperly. So, reach out to your local reps, reach out to your city council, to your senator, everybody. Just reach out to anybody you can to try to help get this thing off the books, because it is, it's absurd. James,
yep.
Thank you so much for joining me, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for telling the folks about it and letting me come on.
Absolutely. Do you have any social media, any websites, anything you want to shout out real quick?
Well, our website there below my name, Dutton Law GA. We do all things criminal law. My partners do civil law stuff. We do federal law. I have my sort of passion project on the side is actually thegeeklawyer.com. All things small businesses for geeky small businesses, from podcasters to streamers to publishing companies to travel companies. A lot of these small businesses can't afford the big skyscraper lawyers, but they still need someone to look over their contracts and their employment stuff. So we do that. I've got a lot of geeky Dragon Con friends that need that help. So we started thegeeklawyer.com just to help specifically for that.
I love it. Well, James, thank you again for coming on the show. And anybody out there, go to lpgeorgia.com to learn more about the Libertarian Party. Go to James's website, duttonlawga.com, and reach out to your local reps. That's it for this week. Tune in Thursday nights, 8 p.m., Liberty Libations, and Monday nights, 8 p.m. for the Free Georgia podcast. We'll see you next week.